Thank you for joining us. You're watching Business Nigeria coming to you live from our studios. Let's get into our second conversation now. Nigerians are currently grappling with the harsh reality of high cost of living. The Nigerian Labour Congress across various sectors is demanding better wages to cope with the rising cost of living across the state. According to them, the current salary is inadequate to meet basic needs, leaving many workers struggling to make ends meet. However, the federal government has stepped in to avert the crisis as negotiations are underway between the government and the NLC, with both sides seeking a solution to address the concerns of workers while considering the broader economic context. Well, to discuss these, I'm joined by the Director General, Nigerian Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Adewale Oyenride. He joins me virtually now. Thank you for joining us, sir. We appreciate you for coming on the program.
Thank you.
Yes, although the Nigerian Labour Congress has suspended it nationwide and promised to come back, given a 14-day ultimatum if the federal government is unable to meet their demands. Do you think what Labour is asking for is unrealistic? If you could highlight some of those demands. And why do you think it's probably taking so long to arrive at a compromise?
Thank you once again for having us. You know, the context of the cost of living issues that Labour decided to take up that led to the protest is quite wide. In fact, you know, there is when you look at the conversation about cost of living itself, it affects so many gamut of issues. It affects the issue of disposable income. It affects the issue of the rising cost of goods and services. Affects the issue of insecurity. Affects so many issues, you know, you have to bring on in the pot for you to start talking about the cost of living. But for Labour, I think they, within the context of their reality, you know, the decision of Labour to go on protest to drive its demand, I think is valid, and I think it's also protected under the Constitution that Nigerians can embark on peaceful protest. Whether we support that protest at this current time is a different conversation. But suffice to say, within the context of Labour and its reality, those demands and those actions are valid. We know also that there has been a bipartite conversation between Labour, negotiation between Labour and government last year that led to the issue of the wage awards. Labour also said they turned in 10 to 15 demands. And many of those demands has not been met by government. Why government has not met those demands, we wouldn't know. In the context of that negotiation, we also wouldn't know because employers were not part of that negotiation. It was a bipartite negotiation between Labour and government. And those are the issues that Labour raised, I said that led to the issue of the protest. And thankfully, the protest ended and they've called up the second day to resume in 14 days after the ultimatum was expired.
Let's touch a bit on some of the demands, which include the removal of levies, fees, dues on tolls on petty traders nationwide. They also talked about implementation of the October 2nd, which of course you just highlighted earlier. They also talked about direct state government to immediately pay outstanding wages and pensions. That also include tax holiday for workers earning about 100,000. There's also 500,000. Those earning to reduce pay as you earn. That is tax for those under 500,000 per month. Speak to us. How do you think the government can respond to this? What is the ideal way for the government to respond to these demands? Do you think the government has the resources to attend to them?
You know, those demands, to a large extent, they are quite valid. In extraordinary times, you have to take extraordinary steps to address those extraordinary times. Are we in extraordinary times? These times, are they quite extraordinary for us as a nation, as people, as organized businesses? Absolutely, we're in very, very extraordinary times. And are we going to need extraordinary steps from government to address the current issues that we have? Definitely, we need an extraordinary effort from government. Following the removal of the fuel subsidy, the cost of living, the dynamics of our living as individuals, the dynamics of our operation as businesses, it changes significantly. And it didn't change for the better. It changed basically for the worse, realistically. And the expectation is that government will take proactive steps. Since that was not done before the removal of the fuel subsidy, the government will take steps now to start to ameliorate the challenges that we've seen arising from the issue of fuel subsidy removal. Did we support the issue of fuel subsidy removal? Absolutely. For over 10 years, ECA has been at the forefront of the removal of fuel subsidy because we believe strongly it was creating a hole in government purse, and the savings, as we have seen, the doubling of the allocation to states after the fuel subsidy removal. Many of the states are now receiving double what they used to receive, led credence to the fact that the fuel subsidy removal is a good policy on its own. So the demand for removal of levies, tax holidays for citizens, support grants, and many other things for organized businesses, I think it's valid in the context of the realities of the now. You have to get organized businesses to get back to working and productive mode. You have to get labor, the households, disposable income to be increased. You have to get the people in the market to be able to sell their wares without encumbrance of levies and multiplicity of levies, both legal and illegal, from the local government and other persons. So those demands are quite valid. And coming to the issue of paucity of funds, I think the government also have not been transparent within the context of the removal of the fuel subsidy. How much have we saved? How much have we saving from the removal of fuel subsidy? What are those funds currently being used for? Those are conversations that will enable you to build consensus. For the people to realize that yes, the removal of the fuel subsidy is actually the right decision for the time. But when people don't, fuel subsidy removed, people are challenged and are suffering, and they are not feeling the gains from the revenue accruing from the removal of fuel subsidy, then people will bring in different perception to those issues. But definitely, difficult times, extraordinary times require extraordinary actions, and hope government will live up to its responsibilities.
You said earlier that states are now, being paid. The allocations are, have gone up significantly. Speak to us. What role should the state governors play to complement what is being recorded at the center?
Unfortunately, all of us seems to have, either deliberately or by many years of this information, he seems to have been blinded to what is happening in the states. It is expected that citizens should ask their state governors, now that revenue has doubled, what exactly are you doing with the additions, with the 100% doubling of allocation? And then people should go back to their states and ask their governors, what exactly are they doing with the funds? Everybody is looking at the federal government while the states are collecting much more, and they are living large. I think the conversation should go back to the state. What exactly are the state governors doing? If there are no developments, physical developments going on, then people should ask questions. Organized labor in those states should ask questions. Citizens should ask questions. If nothing is happening extraordinarily to show that we are receiving more, then people should ask questions. We should ask the state governors to be accountable to the new revenue that they are collecting. Facing the federal government all the time and thinking everything is happening in Aso Rock, we don't help all of us on the long run. We must, as we are facing the federal government to be accountable to its commitment to Nigerians, I think we should do also for the state governments, for the state governors, to be accountable for the revenue they are currently collecting and also for the development of their states.
You spoke earlier about the need to engage with the organized private sector, like the sector you play. What sort of engagement would that be? Do they have the capacity to create jobs? Let's talk about that before we move on to next.
You know, there are so many contradictions that we actually need to address if we really want to have sustained growth. You know, there are so many contradictions, and I'll share some of them with you. You know, it is globally accepted that the private sector creates at least 8 out of every 10 jobs. And that's the reality. And when you have a situation where the unemployment rate is growing, and unemployment itself is a double-edged sword. It's a time bomb. We have a large population of young persons, probably the largest in Africa, and the unemployment rate keeps growing. Now, the simple equation, you know, it's not rocket science. If you want to deal with the issue of unemployment, is to equip or support that sector, the organized private sector, that will actually help you to generate jobs, not creating bottlenecks for the same private sector. So if you equip the private sector, support the private sector, as they are generating jobs, as they are creating more jobs, government revenue will increase because employees will continue to pay tax. Those businesses will continue to pay company tax. As you take as many people off the street as possible, you are also dealing invariably with the issue of insecurity. So it's one item in our plate that if you deal with, you are solving many problems. Now, these are the contradictions. While the president has gone out to many countries, in a few days, the president will go into Qatar for still business summits, business conversations, trying to get investors to the country. Then it is unfortunate that we still have inside the same system ministries, agencies, and departments that are working at cross purpose to the issue of generating foreign investment. You cannot go out, urge global citizens, global businesses to come to the country. And at the same time, we are making a caricature of those investments. Few days ago, or a few weeks ago, an agency of government came up with a policy to ban certain products. And those products, that sector, has in its employ over 500,000 individuals in the value chain, with over $1 billion investment in that same value chain. And the agency came up because they want to be the savior of the Nigerian child, banned products in that sector. And our view is this: you have to balance the issues, the health issues, with the economic issues. They work pari passu together. You cannot create discussion in that sector and put over 500 persons in the job market. The job market that is already saturated, unemployment market that's already saturated. And those are part of the contradictions. Yesterday, we woke up to the Ministry of Interior coming up with expatriate EEL, as they call it. Our view remains that, look, there are structures in place. They're already taking care of those issues. We have the Combined Expatriate Resident Permit and Allied Cards, the SAPA card. We have the NCD-BMB that's already handling this issue in the oil and gas. We have the issue of the work permit. We have the STR visa that is already addressing this issue of skill transference in the economy. Now, the Ministry of Interior came up with his EAL handbook and creating other bottlenecks, requesting or compelling businesses that have expatriates or that intend to bring expatriates to be paying between $10,000 and $15,000 for each expatriate. Now, you have gone out, we went out to seek for foreign direct investment. At the same time, you want to swell breath. We are creating bottlenecks for these same expatriates to come into Nigeria. We believe strongly that that attempt is revenue-driven, it is extortionate in nature, and we are calling on the Ministry of Interior to take a critical look at this issue. So those are some of the contradictions that we have in this economy, that as one agency of government or the federal government is making conscious efforts to drive investment, to promote growth, some other ministries, agencies, and departments in the same government are actually creating processes that are negating those efforts.
Indeed. Just before I let you go, let's look at the data from the recently released unemployment statistics by the NBS, showing that Nigeria's unemployment rate rose to 5% in the third quarter of 2023 from 4.2% in the second quarter. What's your outlook for job creation given the government intervention in the both SME sectors and the SME sector? MSME sectors and SME sector.
The 5%, the 5 points that was mentioned was based on the new parameter. The new parameter for calculating. If we use the old parameter, unemployment rate will be going close to 40%. Close to 40%. That is threatening. That is alarming. And the expectation is that every effort, all ministries, agencies, and departments must align their operations for us to tackle these issues together. The private sector cannot be doing all within its limitation to create jobs, while agencies and ministries of government are also creating bottlenecks for the creation of those jobs. It is a massive concern to organize private sector, and it should be a massive concern to every patriotic Nigerian that unemployment rate is increasing, even when the economic prognosis is not looking very, very well. So we call on government to take proactive action. You know, as I said earlier, if I recount what I said or reiterate what I said, extraordinary times requires extraordinary effort. Coordinated efforts that will not negate the charge of the federal government to create jobs and to take this economy out of the doldrums. Indeed.
There is a General Nigeria Employers Consultative Association, Mr. Adewale Oyeride. Thank you for coming on Business Nigeria.
Thank you for having us again, sir.